worldwide wake-up tour. My name is Norbert Lichtner, and I'll be conducting an interview with David today. All the questions are submitted by David's fans and followers from Czech Republic. There are 10 questions, and I hope you will enjoy the show. David, thank you very much for joining us.
Pleasure.
Are you looking forward to Czech Republic?
Well, I am, not least because of what's gone before. I started out doing what I'm doing 26 years ago, and it was a lonely place. There weren't many people interested in it. There weren't many people actually communicating information in any of these areas, really. There was no alternative media as we have it today. There was nothing like. I had to go looking for audiences. I went around the United States in 1996 for 3 months talking to nobody. And then the first time I went around Australia, it was in the back of a little car, driving from and talking in the evening to the people that turned up. And it seemed an extraordinarily challenging task to get this other way of looking at the world out where people could see it. But what has happened over this last, over a quarter of a century has been amazing, because now I went around Australia, not in the back of a car this time, a few weeks ago, and New Zealand. I talked to full theatres. I just gone around America, New York and Los Angeles and San Francisco, and seen the reaction. And more than that, I have more and more people on the street all over the world wanting to talk about this information. And that is a real indicator of just how far it's getting out there. Not just the people that come to the events, but people are aware of what you're doing. And not just that, but the kind of people. A long time ago, it was a certain kind of a person who was looking at the world in a different way and asking questions. And the vast majority of people were not. But now, people, if you like, from within the system, people with smart suits and ties that stopping me in the street, and they want to talk to me about this information. So it's extremely encouraging, and I'm going to be very interested to see the response around Europe, given what's happened up to this point. The signs are very good. I'm going to be talking in Italy and Romania very soon, after the Czech Republic, and the combined audiences of those two events will be 6,500, which is an extraordinary number. In a country, Romania, I've not been in before, but also to listen to someone talk for 10 hours, with breaks, of course, and lots of illustrations, but to talk for 10 hours on this information just is indicative that there is a change going on. I'm seeing it. People are looking at things they would have waved away and dismissed by reflex action before. It's very encouraging. Lots of challenging things going on in the world, all part of this plan that I've been uncovering and communicating, but still extremely encouraging compared with what it used to be like.
All right, I have to jump on to the questions from your fans and followers in Czech Republic. The first question is everything what you present based on your own research, or do you cooperate with different insiders and informators as are David Wilcock or Corey Goody?
No, I've never met David Wilcock. My way of doing things it can be summed up by basically how I started this. I didn't start it consciously. I'm going to do this. It basically came into my life, and cut a long story short, through 1989, when I was a national spokesman for the British Green Party and a television presenter with the BBC in London, I had this feeling that throughout that year, when I was in a room alone, I wasn't alone. And it got more and more powerful and more tangible until eventually, through a series of coincidences, I ended up at a psychic's house, not telling her anything that was happening to me, but just to see if she would pick up anything around me, because I'd never been to a psychic before. But this presence was so powerful. And what I was told by that psychic over a couple of visits was that I was going to go out on a world stage and reveal great secrets, which was like extraordinary to me. I'm working for the BBC and I'm speaking for the Green Party. And that I wouldn't have to basically go and find the information. The information would come to me. It would just come into my life. It would be put into my mind and it would be put into my life. And from that time, we're talking now 1990, my life has just been this synchronistic experience journey of coming across information in documents, in books, personal experiences, meeting people, and endless different sources, which has been a bit like someone handing you the puzzle pieces to put them together. And it started out in the early 1990s with what you might call the five sense level of all this: names, dates, places, which I still do now, connections, secret societies, etc. And then it moved deeper and deeper in the rabbit hole, if you like, into some really far out areas, including the illusory nature of reality itself. And I use endless different sources, personal experiences, to put these puzzle pieces together. And that is the reason, Norbert, why I talk for 10 hours, because it's not that I like the sound of my own voice, but there are so many dots to connect, so many strands to form the web, that it takes that long to make A go to B, go to C, go to D, and for the picture to unfold. And
what makes you sure that you are connecting the dots properly, that you are doing it right?
Well, the point is that I put the dots together as I experience the information, and then people make up their mind what they make of it. That's the deal. There is no other motive. What I've never done, and the last thing we want is another one of these, is say, this is how it is, you must believe it. What I'm saying is there are other ways of looking at the world. And here are many ways of looking at different aspects of the world. Make of it what you will. But when you write in books in the mid-1990s, that this is the plan, and this is what is planned for the world, a transformation of human society, global society. And then they're now basically reading my books on the television news in daily events, and have been for some time. Then there is a cause and effect there. There is this is what was said, and this is what is happening. And this is one of the major reasons why people are turning to what I'm doing in such numbers now. It's because it has the credibility of what was said is happening. And it's not just me. When you look at different people, whether it's Aldous Huxley, Brave New World, whether it's the 1984 author, Eric Blair, George Orwell, his writing name, or whether it's someone that I'm quoting in these events, a Rockefeller family insider from 1969, they have all described the world that we're in now, and we're moving into even more, all those decades ago, and being extraordinarily accurate in terms of this man I quote from 1969 in the talks, stunningly accurate in detail. This man was describing the internet 20 years before it was officially developed, the World Wide Web. And it's a simple thing. There is an agenda for the world, and it's not projected into tomorrow afternoon. This is projected decades and decades ahead. And if you can access that agenda, then you can pretty accurately, in theme and often detail, predict the future. The idea, however, is not to be proved right. It's to alert people to what's actually unfolding, to the fact that these apparently random happenings in the world are not random, so that there's an intervention to stop it happening. That's the whole point of what I do. And that's what George Orwell was trying to warn people about in 1948.
Now, all right, one question just from me. Look, there are many white papers. They've been published, decades ago, and they are actually telling us what they are going to do with us or what their plans are, and people wouldn't believe them. How can we change actually their?
Well, I think, Robert, we are at a very particular point in this sequence of events where it's more and more difficult for people to ignore it because it's in their face. For instance, I've been writing for a long time, saying for a long time, that the plan was to create a third world war by playing the West off against Russia and China to create a global conflict, because they always planned three. And there was no sign of that for a long time. But you look now, you look at the systematic demonization of Russia, how Russia's now in that extraordinarily horrific area of the world called Syria, with all the other players. You've got the United States and Britain. They want to pick a fight. They want it to kick off. And the demonization of Russia is extraordinary. I mean, someone hacks into the Democratic Party emails, and it's the Russians. So it's very clear that we are being now prepared for that third world war conflict. This is why people like John Kerry, the Secretary of State in the United States, this is why Samantha Power in the UN, US ambassador to the UN, are pouring out this vitriol and rhetoric and abuse about the actions and the alleged plans of Russia, because people are being prepared for this third world conflict. Now, the point is that you can only keep something in the shadows for so long. If you want to transform society in a certain way, you can manipulate from the hidden and manipulate from the shadows for a long time.
Yeah, but one day you have to come up.
But there comes a point where, to transform society in the image that you want, you have to manifest it in the world of the seen. And so what we're seeing now is this extraordinary, exactly what Orwell talked about. This guy in 1969 talked about this extraordinary level of gathering surveillance all over the world, much bigger than anything even people like Edward Snowden have come out with. And then you start to look at the gathering genetics manipulation, the synthetic humans manipulation that's going on. You look at the transhumanist agenda, which is to get technology inside people, to externally control people's thoughts. That, with all that, you're into the realm of Aldous Huxley and Brave New World, because the points I've been making over the years is that Brave New World in 1984 were not written from pure imagination. Both of those guys had access to what this projected agenda was. Orwell, almost to his dying day, was trying to warn people about it, and the police state and the endless war, which we have, the war on terror. When do you know a war on terror has ended? No one can ever say. That's why they picked that as the war. And then you've got what Aldous Huxley was talking about, also drugging people to keep their minds under control. I've just come back from America, where the drugging of children as a matter of course is extraordinary. It's straight off the pages of 1984. Of Brave New World. So are all these genetic, synthetic, genetic manipulations going on. So it's getting harder and harder. And this is absolutely the reason. Not just that more and more people are looking at this information, but the kind of people. It's because you really are going to have to go into a serious level of denial, not to see that the world is changing in very clear ways, and where the direction of the world is going.
All right, can we get back to the questions? The next question is, could you name some people whose works you would recommend to study for better understanding the world and what is going on behind the scenes?
Well, I think if you put Brave New World and 1984 together, you've got the basic picture, and more confirmation that this has been going on and projected for a long time. Brave New World looks at the genetics manipulation, the creating of children in not in through procreation, but through laboratory means, which is exactly where this synthetic genetics is going. And George Orwell was looking at the police state, the surveillance, and the endless war. And it's interesting that Orwell and Huxley knew each other. Orwell was taught French by Huxley at the elite Eton College, where the royal children go. So they had access to some of these inner levels where this knowledge of this agenda is held. And you know, there are. I wouldn't pick out anybody in particular. I mean, what I do, and you know, I recommend others to do, is just use your own intuition about what books you read, and use your intuition on what you accept within those books and what you don't. You know, we have to take our perceptions back. This is absolutely crucial, because as I will go into very early on in the event in Prague, people need to take a breath and look at why people think the way they do. And when you break it down, basically you enter this world as a child, a baby, and immediately, wham, you are in a perception programming situation where your parents influence your perceptions because of what they've downloaded from the system you're about to go through. Then you go through an education system, which is basically a download of the state's version of reality of everything. You have peer pressure to conform to those norms that we are told are real and normal. And you're mad or crazy if you don't. You have the mainstream media and much of the alternative media pouring out this same basic version of normal. And when you break it down, what we're told is reality. What we're told is the world. What we're told is the reality we're interacting with. Never mind what we're told about world events is absolute nonsense. And so when you have a situation where throughout your formative years and then on into adult life, you are constantly being bombarded with the same version of normal, basically. And it's a normal that operates in a stunningly narrow band of possibility. And the vast majority of people download it and therefore go through their lives believing it to be real when it's not. It's nonsense. And this awakening that's happening now is that more and more people are actually looking at this normal, what I call the postage stamp normal, and they go, well, hold on a minute. Maybe we should have a look at this. And when you look at it and you take it apart, you see the nonsense that humanity is sold as the real world compared with what exists beyond it. And so that's the crucial thing. It's the deprogramming.
David,
Not to believe what I say, not to believe what he says or she says, but for people to take their own perceptions back.
What is the best way to wake up people who think that the current social system is good and the right one?
Well, first of all, people have to be open to it. You can't concrete mind that says this is how it is and I'm not moving. But like everything, if you're involved in what we're involved in, which is a perception deception, so manipulation of people's perception so that they see the world and themselves in a certain way, then where do those perceptions come from? They come from, yes, personal experience, which is a form of information. And the rest of it comes from information resources I'm talking about, the education system, the mainstream media, et cetera, et cetera. So perceptions come from information. So if you're going to put a question mark against the perceptions of this postage stamp normal, it's got to be through information. And that information has got to make sense to people. The challenge you have is that the postage stamp normal is what people perceive the world to be. You can talk about that in, a sentence or two, because there's no backstory before what you're saying makes sense to those who think this normal is real. With the postage stamp normal, you can talk about things in a very short fashion, because all the backstory is accepted. Yeah, I accept this is how it is. When people like me are challenging that, there's a whole backstory, because before some of these more far out things that I talk about make sense to people, there's so much information that has to go before. Otherwise, it doesn't make any sense. This is why I talk for so long. But the power of the information is clear to see when people are put before it in the way it does make sense to them. Often people who come along out of curiosity and not believing or thinking it ever will make sense because of what they've heard about me. But it does. And that's all you can do. You can only put out information and people then make of it what they will. You can't try to manipulate people into changing their minds. You can't try to trick them. I mean, if you do, you're just playing the game of the system you're challenging. So it's just pure information. Just take every opportunity you can to get information out that challenges the information source that's coming from mainstream sources. And then people will see it or they won't see it. And that's what the outcome will be.
Okay, so to sum it up, it means that to put out the information and let the people decide for themselves.
Yeah, and if anyone has any idea of doing it differently, well, they are simply what are they going to do? What are they going to do? Try to trick people into believing it or manipulate them into believing it? What's the point of that? Either the information is powerful enough to stand up for itself, or it's not. And the internet has been a godsend to people like me.
We might have a trouble with that one in a couple of days.
Yeah, it's been a godsend for people like me because it's allowed, relatively up to this point, the free flow of information. which has allowed this information to circulate. However, when you look at the things that are now happening, then it's very clear that there is an unfolding agenda to start censoring that big time. And I was recently, actually just a few days ago, in Silicon Valley, south of San Francisco, where this transhumanist madness is actually being, well, it's the engine room of it in so many ways. And there you find Google, you find Facebook, and these internet giants. And they're not what they seem to be. There's an organization that is the technological development arm of the Pentagon called DARPA, one of the most sinister organizations on earth. And it is working hand and in glove with people like particularly Google, but also Facebook. Google is massively into this transhumanist agenda, and through its domination of search engines and through Facebook's domination of social media and the circulation of information that way, they are working to the same agenda as DARPA out of the Pentagon. And this explains what would otherwise be a very, very strange career move by a lady called Regina Duggan. Regina Duggan was the director of DARPA, which gives to the world things like death rays and so on, because they haven't got enough ways to kill people yet. And it also claims, DARPA, that it was the creator at the start of the internet. The internet's very important to them, but they want to keep the side of it that's good for them. They don't want to keep the side of it that's bad for them, and that's the free flow of information. So Regina Duggan, this director of DARPA, suddenly resigns and becomes an executive of Google. You go, right, hold on, technological development arm of the Pentagon, search engine, that's a bit of a career move. But of course it's not, because they are working closely together on this transhumanist technological agenda. Then Regina Duggan leaves Google and goes on to do the same job now at Facebook. These internet giants are coming together. They have reached the point of domination now. Of course, you've got YouTube, also owned by Google, where they think they can play the cards they were always going to play, which is fiercely censoring information that this hidden hand I'm talking about doesn't want people to know. So it's another one of the reasons that I've gone out on this open-ended world speaking tour, challenging as it is physically sometimes, because we've just got to do everything we can to get this information out to as many people as possible, because the internet means of communicating it is in the gun sights of these people.
All right, David, we have to move to the next question. Different independent publicists talk about a big event which will change the world, for example, like 9/11. They talk about financial collapses, ecological catastrophes, epidemics, or false flag terrorist attacks. Is there a way how to tell when these things are in the pipeline?
Well, there's a very simple question when events happen in the world. So there's two things. Where are we being taken? Where is the world going? And what I do in these events is set that out really early on. And then once you know that, and basically it's a centralized fascist dictatorship with less than 1% at the top of the pyramid, everyone else at the bottom of the pyramid, and a fierce, merciless police military state actually, in between the two to hold that status quo ongoing. So once you've got that in mind, and obviously there's more detail, then it's a simple question when events happen, whether it's a terrorist attack, whether it's a banking crash, whatever it is, a war. Who benefits? Who benefits from this event happening? Who benefits from me believing the official story of these events and why they happened and who did them? And when you ask that question, who benefits in the light of these things, then again and again and again and again and again, and I can say it endlessly because that's how many times it's happened to me, you see that those who benefit from them are those that want to take this world further down the road to this structure I've just described, what I call the Hunger Games society. So look at what is happening every time there's a terrorist attack. There are more laws on surveillance. There's more laws on communication of information. There are more armed police on the streets. Sometimes, often, increasingly now, troops on the streets. And what is that doing? That's moving us more and more to this police state within that structure that I'm talking about.
David, have you noticed that a couple of days ago in Switzerland, they voted in the referendum for bigger, full surveillance of the government, of the their secret agents over the people. But I was talking about this on my radio show, and I tried to explain that the terrorists are actually communicating different way, not the way the normal people do. So this won't affect their communication. But have you noticed that the Swiss voted for the surveillance on themselves?
No, I didn't notice that because I've been traveling. I've just been coming back from America in the last 3 days. But it absolutely makes sense because there is a technique that I've called for a long time, problem, reaction, solution, and this is how all these events play out. You want to change society in a way you couldn't do just by announcing this is what we're going to do, because what you want to do is so extreme that people will say we're not having it. And why are you doing it? Well, there's no point. There's nothing. We don't need it. So what you do at stage one of problem, reaction, solution is you create a problem. You blame someone else for it or something else for it. You then get the mainstream media, easy, to basically tell the people the official version of that happening. And at stage two, you want a reaction from the public. And that reaction is all based around a 4-letter word called fear. Once you get people in a state of fear, they will give their power away to that which they think can protect them from what they've been manipulated to fear. So you've got your problem manufactured, you've got your reaction, fear and do something, and then you offer your solutions to the problems you've covertly created, which are to go on creating this structure of this Hunger Games society I talked about. So getting people in fear is crucial. It's all about fear. Of course, terrorist attacks, wars. The fear that it might happen to you. These are all psychological traumas that get people to give their power away. And what another area of this problem, reaction, solution that people need to be aware of is, I've been saying since 2008, that financial crash, which was fundamentally engineered and manipulated, was not the end. It was just the next stage. They want a massive financial crash, not least based on using the so-called derivatives market, which is worth apparently hundreds of trillions of dollars officially, but is worth next to nothing in reality. It's all a figment of the imagination. And of course, now we're facing this situation at the moment with the Deutsche Bank in Germany, which is getting itself in serious trouble. We could have a Lehman Brothers on our hands in Europe. And the idea is to create a financial banking crash and then deal with it in a different way. You know, I described that structure a few minutes ago of the less than 1% at the top, the police state under that, and then the rest of the population. The rest of the population when I say that, I mean basically the rest of the population. I mean people who think now that they're well off and they've got a nice house and money in the bank, and it's not really their problem. Well, it is, because if you're not in the less than 1%, they want what you've got as well. And so what we've seen in Europe increasingly, not least in the European thing, very, very significant in relation to finance. And that's the increasing replacement of the bailout response to banking crashes to the bail-in, where instead of governments giving money to banks to bail them out, which the public are then responsible for paying back, and so you have all the austerity justified Hunger Games society. Instead of that, after 2011 in Cyprus with the banking crash there, the European Union, and it's happening elsewhere around the world as I travel, I check these things everywhere at the time I go into another country. The bail-in, where instead of governments bailing out banks, the bank goes directly to the accounts of depositors and takes it to bail itself out. Because when you put money in a bank, even that's only in theory, but when you put money in a bank, you're just an unsecured creditor if the bank crashes. These are the things that people need to become aware of quick, because if we don't, then we'll see these events as random, we'll respond to them in fear, and we'll give our power away to respond to them to the very people who created them. And this thing will go on.
Well, this did happen in Cyprus. Next question from your people is, more and more people can see that the current system is falling down. What do you think? When will this change occur, and what has to happen before the change comes?
We have to take power back from the few. And you can only do that by ceasing to cooperate with your own enslavement. You see, when you look at the numbers, it is absolutely staggering how few people are dictating to the lives of, what, more than 7 billion. It's extraordinary. And they are able to do it because people are frightened of saying no to authority. And this is crucial, that which is manipulating from the hidden is seeking to divide and rule the target population in every way it can and play different parts of that target population off against each other. This is what's happening in Europe with the mass migration that's been planned a very, very long time. This guy, I will quote in Prague in 1969, describe what's happening today in 1969 and why it would happen. You have the blatant attempts in the United States, where I have been for the last nearly a month, to create a race war there and divide and rule. And these people in the hidden, through their agents in the scene, like the billionaire George Soros, are seeking to divide and rule people in every way they possibly can. So there's two things really that need to happen. First of all, people of different colors, races, backgrounds, beliefs need to realize that this is not a conspiracy to enslave that group or that group or that group or that race or that religion. It's to enslave all of us. And if we go on being divided and ruled and fighting among ourselves, they will do it. And the other thing is, we have to stop cooperating with our own enslavement and our children's enslavement even more so. So, you know, if someone comes out of a parliament building, it's a handful of people, and they say, we've decided to do this, which is actually deleting freedoms of the people, whatever it is. They can only impose that if the people say, well, okay, well, it's the law, so we better do it. What people have got to start doing en masse is saying, we're not doing that. We're not having this. This is not acceptable to us. We're not cooperating. And they have no chance. How can a handful dictate to a vast number of people that won't cooperate with a handful? But that's got to take courage for people to say, I'm going to overcome my fear of authority, and I'm going to stand up for what I believe in, and not just cave in because some guy in a dark suit has said that I should.
There will be a presidential election in the United States in November. People have noticed Hillary Clinton's poor health. Do you have an update or updated information about her health? And does she use doubles for public appearances?
Well, I've seen many elections in my life, but traveling around America in the last nearly a month, I mean, this is a puppet show. This is a circus going on. You know, we've got 320 million Americans, and they've been given a choice because the way the system is rigged. They've been given a choice between a lady who I've been tracking since the mid-1990s. You know, I published a book in 1995 called "And the Truth Shall Set You Free," which gave chapter and verse of the background to the Clintons, including even then the size of the body count, the number of people who had things on the Clinton or had crossed the Clintons who were suddenly no longer with us. And that has gone on and on and on. At least 4 people connected to this outrageous scandal of the way the Democratic Party manipulated the candidacy to Clinton over Bernie Sanders. At least 4 people connected with that and exposing it are now dead. It seems you cross the Clintons and you suddenly have this overwhelming desire to commit suicide. And you've got this extraordinary level of corruption with the Clinton Foundation, where she's supposed to be standing as the first woman president, the emancipation for women. And one of the biggest donors to the Clinton Foundation is the Saudi royal family. Yeah, they believe in emancipation of women. And then you've got, as you point out, this health situation. I mean, you know, it's widely talked about in America, but not by the mainstream media. Not by the mainstream media, except to discredit any idea that there's a problem. But she's clearly got some kind of brain function problem. And they hide it by saying she's got pneumonia or she's overheating. I was in New York. I mean, you know, I'm well known among my family for having a thermostat that doesn't really work that great. I don't like it very hot and I don't like it very cold. And New York, when I was there, was very, very hot, except on one day when it was just like an English summer's day. And that was the day, and I was very close to where it happened. That was the day that Clinton was supposed to have overheated and almost collapsed.
Oh, she did collapse.
Yeah, she did. And the idea it was overheating, of course, that didn't stand up. So they then came out with the pneumonia and all this stuff. But the thing about Hillary Clinton is that she is a representative of this hidden hand, absolutely down to her fingernails, her DNA. And thus, the reason they want her in, ideally, although Trump will do for them, is because she will not only do whatever they want, but she will do it with gusto and want to do it. No manipulation necessary. And her first priority, if she gets into the White House, will be to push on this series of events to World War III. She's already doing it in her election campaign while I was out there. Over and over, she will have Putin and Russia as the demon in her narrative, in her speech. And then you've got on the other side, you've got Donald Trump, who's supposed to be anti-establishment. Well, his whole career has been interacting with these establishment figures. And both of them are on their knees to Israel. So that's the Palestinians stitched up for another term. And both of them believe in increasing the bombing in Syria and creating what they call no-fly zones. Both of them say that. So then you have the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff at the Pentagon this week on Capitol Hill saying that, yes, they could introduce safe zones, so no-fly zones, in other words, where only the US coalition can fly. So it's not a no-fly zone, really. It's a no-fly for people we don't like zone. But he said on Capitol Hill, this chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, yes, we can have a no-fly zone, but it will mean going to war with Syria and Russia. So Clinton's the one they want, but Trump's perfectly acceptable to them.
Now, speaking of the censorship and speaking of Hillary's health, I don't know whether you know about it. On Monday, Michael Savage, and God bless the guy, I like him, he was taken off the air, 400 affiliates in the United States, because of him talking about Hillary's health. Have you heard of it?
Yeah, I caught that. I caught that story just before I left Los Angeles. See, this is another classic example of censoring that information which will challenge the official narrative. And this censorship is increasing all the time for a very simple reason. The alternative media, in all its different facets and forms, has started to seriously impact upon people's perceptions. And they're terrified of what's been happening. Thus, they want to shut down anybody who's going to tell anything that will put the official narrative in question. And the official narrative that she doesn't have a health problem is I'll tell you from talking to Americans, traveling around America and just chatting in airports and stuff like that. They know, the vast majority of them absolutely know that she has a serious health problem. But what you've got there, and this is the way it's been played, when I talk to people about why they're voting for Clinton, they say invariably, not everybody, of course, but invariably, because she's not Trump. Why are you voting for Trump? Because he's not Clinton. And you know, of all the elections I've ever seen, the number of people that in that country that want neither of them is ridiculously high. So the scene is set in the public mind there to be open to other explanations for what's happening in terms of her health and these strange things that are happening, being helped up small flights of steps, etc. And so anything that's going to highlight that, anyone's got a decent sized audience who can get that information out, hey, what about this? Then it's more and more likely they're going to be shut down. That's the way it works.
The next question is, there is a large group of Christians who follow your work. Although most of the churches would not talk about the New World Order and the global shadow government, a lot of Christians are losing their illusion about the world we live in. Should we or shouldn't we believe in the Savior?
Well, I don't come from a religious point of view at all. But from what I've been reading, you know, there's a lot of people who are coming from that direction in the Czech Republic. But for me, what people believe is basically none of my business. I get interested, and everyone should get interested, when people start imposing their beliefs on others, when they start insisting that people have the beliefs that they have. You know, you can follow a religion, and you can come at it from a position, and you can live a very loving life through that religion, or you can come at it from another angle, and you can live a very unpleasant, very violent life through that same religion. I mean, you know, there are endless Christians coming from a heart position, and there are other people who call themselves Christians through the ages, who've created mayhem, violence, and slaughter. And now, of course, the same applies to the Muslim religion. You know, some of the nicest, kindest, most generous people I've met in my life have been Muslims. I don't agree with their religion at all, but they live their lives like that. And then there are others, of course, who are extraordinary in the levels of violence that they just through the same religion that others justify being peaceful and kind. So it's not the religion; it's how you live your life through it. But you know, for me, you know, we don't need middle men and women between us and the what I would call infinite awareness that we're all part of. We can tap into that direct. You know, we don't need intermediaries to tell us what God wants us to do and what will happen if we don't. We can tap into that greater self, that greater reality, without having someone in between acting as a go-between. But you know, people live their lives. They believe what and do what they like. It's the imposition that I challenge. And you see the imposition. You see it purely in statistics. If you're born into a Muslim family, the vast, overwhelming chances you're going to live your life as a Muslim, or follow that religion. If you brought up as a Christian in the southern states of America, you're almost certainly going to live your life as a Christian. You're brought up in Tel Aviv or New York, you're in the Jewish faith, you're almost certainly going to follow Judaism as a religion, if you're going to follow any religion at all. So you can see this cause and effect. What I would say is set the children free. You know, if the religion you choose to have has validity, then people will see that and come by free choice, and not by having to be told that this is what they should do. I think, you know, I'm sick and tired of this world where constantly, from cradle to grave, people are told what they are, what they should think, what they should be, what they should believe, what they should say, what they shouldn't say. We've got to set each other free, because the greatest form of censorship is that which people impose on each other without even the authorities being involved.
The next one is a philosophical question. In cultures with Manichaean and Abrahamic religious influence, evil is usually perceived as a dualistic, antagonistic opposite of a good. Now the question, is this dualism real, and should we live according its perception? Do you agree that this is just a projection of our mind, so we can live in the system, in the reality we created by using dualism? Is it why religions created gods and devils?
Well, first of all, I mean, I talk about this in the event in Prague on next Saturday, week on Saturday. What's interesting is there was a new kind of psyche, a new way of seeing the world, which came out of the Middle East and North Africa about 6,000 years ago. And it transformed the way societies lived, the way they were organized, and so much violence came with it, and desire to impose its will upon people. And I go into this. There's quite a little backstory. And the religions you're talking about, Judaism, Islam, Christianity, they came out of that same area that this psyche came out. They're expressions of each other. And for me, let's pull the two questions together when we're talking about reality. Because this is kept from people, and it's not taught in the schools, certainly wasn't when I was, and not here with not my children. When you say to people, when you look out of your eyes, what do you see? Do you see everything there is to see? And people go, oh, yeah, of course I do. Well, they don't. They see a tiny, tiny frequency range, which is so ludicrously narrow, it's laughable. According to mainstream science, the electromagnetic spectrum is 0.005% of what exists in matter, energy, etc. in this universe. And visible light, which is the only frequency band that we can actually turn into a visual reality, is a fraction of the 0.005%. Within that visible light band, the planet that we think we're on is, according to mainstream science, compared to the projected size of the universe, equivalent to 1/10000000th of a pinhead. And yet, inside 0.005%, inside a billionth of a pinhead, there is this belief that all we need to know is between the covers of a single book, whatever religion it may be. And the myopia of that is staggering, stunning. And beyond this frequency band we can see is infinity, an infinity of awareness, infinity of consciousness, infinity of realities very different to this one. And so what, I mean, personally, I've been calling it for years, religion, the greatest form of mind control ever invented. Because religion is a state of induced myopia, a state of an induced sense of extreme limitation. Because this is what this postage stamp consensus I talk about, this real world normal is all about. It's about focusing people's perceptions of everything within such a narrow band of possibility, ludicrously narrow band of possibility, that when anyone comes along and says, actually, this is happening, people say, that's impossible, that's ridiculous, you're mad, that can't be happening. No, it can't be happening within your perception of limitation, but it is actually happening. And religion has played a major part in putting people in these states of myopia, where anything beyond them is dismissed, and people have, how many people through the centuries have been burned at the stake, beheaded, whatever, right up to present day, because they had a vision of possibility that was outside the covers of a single book. That's got to change.
All right, David, second to last.
Because if they don't, then this is going to go on.
Second to last. David, what is your biggest personal wish in today's world?
That people love each other. That people realize that the perceptions we have of being apart from everything and apart from each other is just an illusion of the decoding process of the human mind, the human, what I call biological computer. There has been throughout the ages, right to present day, this recurring theme, and quantum physics is delved more and more into this area now, of everything being one field of energy, one field of awareness, one field of consciousness. And we are points of attention within this awareness. This point of attention is called David Icke. That point of attention is called Norbert. But with the same consciousness, the same infinite awareness, having different experiences. What happens within the illusory realm of the five senses is that the way they decode reality, this holographic, illusory, physical reality, is that everything's apart from everything else. And once you have that perception of everything, then the potential for divide and rule and playing off the parts to control the whole are infinite. Once you go to another level of awareness where you can see that everything is just an expression of the same consciousness, then this potential for divide and rule and playing people off against each other is massively reduced. And if you expand enough, then it's deleted. And it's no accident that this world is run as if it's solid, as if this world is real, as if everything is apart from everything else. This is how science looks at the world, quantum physics apart. It's how medicine looks at the world, politics, the media, all of it. And thus, the laws and the way that human society interacts and the way it's organized is based on a fundamental delusion and misunderstanding of the very reality we're experiencing. And through the ages, when people have come to the fore, called seers or thinkers outside the box, etc., when they've come and spoken about this, the fact that reality is not how we think it is, they've always been jumped upon by authority. This authority doesn't want people realizing we're all one. Doesn't want people to realize that. I mean, how do you sell arms? How do you make arms? How do you use arms when you know we're all one? But if you can persuade people that your genetic line or your religion is somehow more special than everyone else, and they're not like you, and they're evil and all that stuff, then people can justify to themselves these horrors that they do. When if we just realize that actually we're just different experiences of the same awareness experiencing itself, then we can start to realize that all this fighting, all this conflict, all this desire to get one over on someone else is all a nonsense. It's all a delusion. Because, you know, if we work together, there'd be no hunger, there'd be no one homeless, there'd be no one cold. None of these things are necessary. They happen because of the way the system's structured, and it's systematically structured to bring about that society. And it's very simple. We want to change the world to something better. We better change to something better. Because if we don't, the world ain't going to change. Because the world is merely a collective expression of the state of human consciousness.
I do agree with you that we have to really change before we want to change the world. The last question is, as a part of your worldwide wake-up tour, you will be live at Lucerna in Prague, Czech Republic on 8th of October 2016. What can people look forward to comparing it to your last visit in 2010, which was, by the way, a very fantastic event?
Well, it's an interesting question because, you know, we all have it, you have it, all people have it. When suddenly the kaleidoscope moves and you see things in greater and greater clarity. And that's happened to me over and over again in the last 2 years. And I never go out on a speaking tour unless what I'm saying has moved on, has got more clarity, it's got more information. And you know, in America in the last 3 weeks, people were coming up to me afterwards and saying, I've seen you speak before, but I've never seen that. It's light years ahead of what I did last time I was in the Czech Republic, light years ahead of what I did before this tour started, the last one in 2014. It's just massively expanded, and I couldn't be more happy with the way it's come together.
All right, David, thank you very much for answering these questions for your fans. I'm looking forward to meeting you on Tuesday next week, and we're going to conduct a little bit different interview.